Hey listeners, Kyle aka Player 2 from Arcade Bros. You are enjoying another show from the Four-Eyed Radio Network, The Fern. For more shows, visit foureyedradio.com.
This Four-Eyed Radio production is brought to you by America Joy Print Shop. All your printing needs taken care of in one convenient place. Visit americajoy.com for business cards, flyers, banners, decals, car wraps, and more. Visit americajoy.com.
Bond. James Bond. Shaken, not stirred.
Utter one more syllable and I'll have you killed.
I thought Christmas only comes once a year.
For your eyes only, darling.
I never joke about my web 007.
For England, James.
Come in, Univex. James Bond here.
Am I going to have a problem with you, Bond?
Allow me to introduce myself.
You're that secret agent! That English secret agent from England!
You know, you're cleverer than you look.
Still better than looking cleverer than you are.
My God, what's Bond doing?
I think he's attempting re-entry, sir.
007, reporting for duty.
Hello, the name's Berkeley, Ziggy Berkeley from Doom Cheese Cinema, and with me is Eric Dewey from Science and Beer, Socially Awkward, and many other fine shows on the Fern, including this one, Her Majesty's Secret Podcast, wherein we discuss all things James Bond 007. And tonight is the episode that we've been waiting for a very long time, the one we've been privately referring to as the Abomination episode. Not because we expect the episode itself to be an abomination, but because of the two movies we're going to be discussing, Die Another Day and On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Yes, the oddballs, the abominations, if you will, of the Bond franchise, the nearly series killers, if you will, as well. On Her Majesty's Secret Service could have potentially killed the franchise if they hadn't been able to get Connery back for another movie, and Die Another Day very nearly did kill the franchise.
Yes, and that's the movie we're going to be discussing first, rather than take them in chronological order. Since our last few discussions have been about Pierce Brosnan's films, we figured we'd round it all off. And besides, really, when it comes to Die Another Day, there isn't as much to say as one might think.
It's I watched this movie again, and this is kind of amusing. We were just talking about it before the show, how rewatching Die Another Day, I thought that it sucked just a little bit less than I remembered it sucking. Now, I'm not saying that all of a sudden I looked at it and said, oh, wow, actually, this is good. But no, it just, I had built it up in my mind as being this horrific ball of poop. And it was still that horrific ball of poop, but it was slightly drier, not quite as stinky. It was just basically, I kind of was like, okay, there was a couple of moments in it when I was like, oh, okay, this is tolerable. Whereas with On Her Majesty's Secret Service, rewatching that, I thought that it stunk even worse than I had remembered it stinking. So we'll get to that one. But for Die Another Day, what's the first moment in the movie where it loses you?
The very first moment in the movie is the first moment in the movie where it loses me. With the incredibly... I'm going to end up using this word a lot, ladies and gentlemen, for this movie. With the incredibly shitty CGI opening sequence, it's just... I know. You can say, well, it's so much better now. One, that's not true. It actually isn't. And two, even for then, it sucked.
No, this movie was made in 2002. They definitely had the technology available to make that... Well, first of all, it was unnecessary. Yes, I know that in that time, they were still having trouble with things like hair and water for digital effects. It didn't look realistic yet. Nowadays, yes, it is much better. It's still not 100%, but it's much better. But if they knew this, they knew this was a limitation, they didn't have to have them surfing in to the compound.
No, the surfing was just bloody dumb.
It was completely unnecessary. It was superfluous to the extreme. It was just, and it would have been acceptable if the graphics had been there, or if they'd have been able to actually film, I don't know, a couple of people surfing and use that footage instead of doing the cheesy digital effects that just come off as cheap. And yeah, you're right. That is, I was going to say that. That's why I asked the question, because that's the moment it kind of lost me right from from the get-go, too. I was like, all the effects in the previous Brosnan movies, at least that's something you could point to. Even if you couldn't point to the plot or the acting or anything else, you could at least point to the effects and say they did a good job. Even with GoldenEye, which was the oldest of them, the model work was very well done. Yes, looking back, you can be like, okay, obviously that's model work, but at the time, it was actually very good.
GoldenEye was leaps and bounds better than this. I mean, not just as an overall film, though, of course, it was, but just visually speaking, just very much leaps and bounds better than this.
Yeah, it's, and like you said, right from the very beginning, it's like it doesn't even give you a chance to give it a chance. It just right from the get-go, it's like, here's what we're going to be doing with this movie. You are going to get nothing but cheesy action sequences, overtly sexual one-liners. Not the typical James Bond innuendo that you get, but just blatant sexy jokes. Which, I don't have a problem with sexy jokes. I don't have a problem with innuendo, but it's just, in this movie, it's over the top, and it's so blatant. It doesn't let you get there on your own. It's in your face.
And when you have your good Bond girl talking to your bad Bond girl and saying, "Oh, he did you?" Really?
Yeah. He must have been really desperate. Yes, the cat fightiness. I mean, it's just like...
I mean, the cat fight is fine, but he did you? I mean, where are we? I mean, is this a James Bond movie, or is this I don't even... Ugh. It's crap!
Yes, exactly. It's fine for the female villain and the female hero to fight with each other, to even quip back and forth about maybe their conquest. That's fine, but that sort of cattiness where it's just like so petty, and it should be beneath both of these characters. But that's the thing, is both of these characters, you never get the impression that there's anything beneath them.
No, except the occasional man.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
Yeah, they try so hard, and they start out with the female villainous character starts out being a strong female character, the kind who says, "Oh no, I'm not going to hook up with Bond because I'm better than that." And you think just for a moment, okay, maybe we're seeing a good, strong female character. That lasted all of maybe 5 minutes. Bond kisses her,
however,
and then she's like, "Oh, let's do it."
One bone I will give this movie, is when she does give in, it's definitely for the purpose of furthering her own aims, her own mission. So I would say at that point, she's playing Bond's game on himself.
That's fair. Yeah, but it's still kind of, because at the time that you're watching it, that's not established yet. So it really just comes off as, here's another female character who just can't keep it in her pants around Bond. And then, of course, the Jinx character. Ugh. I love Halle Berry. I love Halle Berry as an actress. I love looking at her, but...
See, I don't in either category. I'm sorry. I look at her, and her attitude just takes away anything else that might come about her. When I looked at her coming out of the water, I thought, we'll get back to what all these references are in a moment, but I thought the reference was almost blasphemous with her coming out. Mm-hmm. Taking on the Dr. No scene with Ursula Andress.
Yes.
But from the moment I saw Halle Berry in this movie, and this is what I get from her in almost everything I've seen her in, not quite, but almost, it's just a radiation of attitude that says, I'm Halle Berry, and that's all you need to know. It's the closest comparison I can make. I get the same feeling off of January Jones. I'm January Jones. I don't have to act. I'm just fucking entitled. And that's what I get out of Halle Berry. I think Halle Berry is slightly more talented than January Jones, but...
January Jones is the girl in Mad Men, right?
She's the girl in Mad Men.
Okay.
She was also in X-Men First Class, and she was also in that really horrible Liam Neeson movie, Unknown.
Okay, I didn't see that one. I think the only thing... I've seen X-Men First Class, but I didn't spot her in it specifically. Maybe I was just not paying attention. But I've seen some of Mad Men, not all of it, and I haven't seen enough of... All I know is that she was horrible at hosting Saturday Night Live. I did see her hosting Saturday Night Live, and that was awful. That was not good at all.
Yeah,
but I've never had a problem with Halle Berry, with the exception of, in the first X-Men, that stupid line about what happens when a frog gets hit by lightning. the same thing that happens to everything. I'm like, oh God. But that wasn't, she didn't write that line as far as I'm aware. So
no, that's not her fault.
So, but other than that, I mean, I loved her in Swordfish, even though it wasn't. I'm not going to try to defend Swordfish as being the epitome of great acting.
You loved her nude scene in Swordfish. Let's be completely honest with ourselves, shall we?
No, I did. Yeah. Especially because it was so much better than the one in, what was that other movie she was in, Monsters Ball. But that scene was just not sexy at all. So it was kind of like, I'm seeing something I want to see, but I'm not seeing it the way I want to see it.
See, that's something you're always going to get off of our show. Honesty. Please go on.
Yeah, no, but I liked her in that movie, and maybe it's just because I liked that whole movie in general, even though it was so over-the-top ridiculous. It never really claimed to be otherwise, and so I was okay with it. But going back to Die Another Day, yes, the moment she steps out of the water, you're like, oh gosh. But it suffers, and that's one thing that I noticed about these two movies more than any of the other Bond movies. Yes, most of the Bond movies have something somewhere in them that at least, hints back towards a previous movie. These two movies are so overt about it. They are so just, hey, look, this is a Bond movie. Hey, over here, look, this is something from another Bond movie. Remember this? Come on, guys.
Oh, especially Die Another Day. And it's on purpose because, of course, Die Another Day was, in fact, its release was pushed back by a year so it could specifically come out for the 40th anniversary of the James Bond film series. And as a result, what they decided to do was a script that I can only describe as really shitty fanfic.
It was not good.
Every single thing in this movie is a reference to another James Bond movie. There are barely 5 minutes of originality in here that does not refer back to something else somehow. And if it's not referring back to a James Bond movie, it's referring back to a James Bond book. Like when James Bond picks up the birdwatching tome,
yes,
that's the book that Ian Fleming got the character's name from.
Yes.
And when you see our villain, Colonel Moon, that's actually a reference to the first James Bond book written by someone other than Ian Fleming, Colonel's son. Now, what we decided when we were thinking about doing this episode was that we thought about giving Die Another Day its own show. However, we also decided the only way you could possibly discuss this movie for more than about a half hour or so would be to point out every single reference that it makes, and that would be really boring.
Yes.
So all I'm going to suggest to you about those is that if you're really a James Bond fan and really curious, it's the only reason to watch this shitty movie, and make a drinking game out of it. Spot the Bond reference and name it correctly. You can decide if you're going to take a drink of every time you get it right or every time you get it wrong. Either way, you're going to be on your ass drunk before the movie's half done.
What you do is you watch it with friends. Everybody has to put down the reference and the what it is, and whoever's wrong has to take a drink. Or if you get it right, if you're the only one who gets it right, you get to make everybody else take 2 drinks. So you can have some fun with this.
And I think it's the only way you can have some fun with this, unless, like Eric, you really, really like staring at Halle Berry no matter how bad the role is, or, like me, you really, really like staring at Rosamund Pike no matter how bad the role is. That said, I think Rosamund Pike is a slightly better actress.
I could agree with that. Well, honestly, I don't know that I've seen her in anything other than this, so it's really hard for me to judge that because I didn't think...
The main thing that I can think of is Doom.
I haven't seen that, so... But, there's so many things in this movie that are just... And what really stinks is when you're going through and watching it, you see moments where there was potential for things to be good, and then they didn't quite make it there. I mean, you start out with the plot to begin with. I mean, first of all, okay, we've got another diamond-encrusted laser satellite. Guys, seriously. A little bit of originality.
It was stupid the first time.
We talked about this when it came up before. It wasn't a good idea then. It's not a good idea now. Not only
that, but it's being controlled by North Korean military officer. Okay, I can deal with this. Who, after he supposedly dies, gets this magical surgery that turns him into a white man in just a couple of months, and then in less than a year, he becomes this multi-gazillionaire British guy who now is the toast of the town and ready to take over the world.
Yes, he's basically
Bullshit.
a cross between he's basically Richard Branson is what he is. I mean, that's what he comes off as, is just this daredevil billionaire guy who wants to do all this crazy stuff, including putting satellites into space and whatnot. But yes, it's completely unplausible in every way, shape, or form. I mean, first of all, you find out, yes, he made all his money in diamonds. Well, all he's doing is, basically laundering blood diamonds. Well, that's okay. I get that and everything. But how is it that they took one look at one diamond and said, yep, the chemical composition is identical to conflict diamonds. But
and yet no one else did this beforehand.
Yeah, nobody else has thought to do this to any of the millions of diamonds this guy has evidently put out in order to make this amount of money. Nobody else has thought to maybe do a chemical analysis on the diamond. Really, guys? Yeah, it's just the
And what about this magic surgery to make him into a white guy?
Oh yes, the DNA replacement therapy, where they described it as, first of all, you kill all of your bone marrow. Somehow you live through this, and then they replace it with a donor DNA that they get from some homeless guy or orphan that won't be missed, they say, obviously indicating that whoever the DNA is harvested from, it has to die for the process.
And all this does is make cosmetic changes. You keep your brain, you keep your memories, you keep your personality.
But you lose your ability to go to sleep, evidently. You can't sleep at all, ever, so you have to spend an hour a day in the dream machine to keep your sanity, says the guy who's raving insane.
I mean, this is like somebody looked at all the rumors and stories about Michael Jackson, took some acid, and went to town. I mean,
yeah, it's the premise. The premise is just so ridiculous, and the fact that he's doing all of this essentially for North Korea to take South Korea. That's like, ultimately, that's really his only goal. Like everybody else, at least when we had other crazy Bond villains, they wanted to take over the whole world, or they wanted to destroy the whole world except for their little group of perfect people. Something like that. No, this guy wants South Korea, and that's it. He's doing all of this for frickin' South Korea. It's like,
now,
dude.
That part I'm going to be okay with, for the simple reason that if I'm not of Korean descent at all myself. However, I've had friends from both sides of the border, actually. And if you're from either side, then the split of your country really is a big damn deal.
Oh, no, I totally get that.
So
I'm not saying that it's an unlofty goal for someone. I mean, that's what North Korea wants. The point that I'm trying to make is that that's the only part that they made even slightly plausible, is that here's what the bad guy wants. He wants North Korea to take over South Korea. Okay, that's fine. But how he's doing it, it's like, okay, you've got essentially a doomsday weapon at your disposal, and all you want is one country.
The miniature Death Star is what you've
exactly. I mean, and your big trick is like, I'm going to blow up some landmines. That's what I'm going to do with this. I'm like, it's like, it hurts my feelings. That's what it comes down to. It hurts my feelings that they would consider me as a consumer of movie product so dumb to buy into this.
But this is why we propose the drinking game, because, like they say in Family Guy, you just drink until you can't feel feelings anymore.
Exactly. But yeah, I'm trying to think. There were some moments that I was like, okay, this is kind of fun at least. A lot of people gave them a lot of crap for the car because they had the invisibility cloak, and I don't think
like
that's,
me.
Well, and I get that, especially when
I hate the car.
The technology isn't there yet, and all of a sudden it's basically perfect. That's a leap that they tend to make in these type of movies anyway. I'm okay with that. I'm not okay with them overusing the invisibility, but I am okay with it existing. Especially since they actually explain the technology in the same way that type of technology has been and is being developed. In fact, we just talked about it on Socially Awkward this week, that South Korea, as a matter of fact, is building a skyscraper with this technology on it. There's an entire skyscraper going to be going up in South Korea that is going to be essentially invisible when they turn it on, basically. And turn on the invisibility. There's going to be a skyscraper that you basically can't see unless you're looking for it.
What a colossal waste of electricity.
Yes.
I just have to say that.
Oh, quite. We agree completely. It's just kind of, they're basically doing it because they can. It's kind of like, what are you guys trying to out Dubai? I don't understand what's going on here. That's the kind of thing I see coming out of the United Arab Emirates, but not out of South Korea.
Oppa Gangnam Style.
But the technology, as they described it, is the right way. It's basically it's science fiction in the fact that they're taking it to the extreme. They're making it work perfectly when it's not there yet, but the technology as they described it is the way that technology will eventually work. So I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that happening for the Predator. I am not okay with this happening in a James Bond movie. It's too much.
Well, I do agree, because there was just too much going on, but at the same time, it did give us something that I've always wanted to see, is a battle essentially between two Bond cars.
Well, yeah, because every single one of Colonel Moon's cars, I have to keep stopping myself from calling him Colonel Sun.
Just
is an actual update of a real James Bond car from before. That's one of the inside references that I said we weren't going to talk about. But hey, we can go back on our word occasionally because, Well,
I just, like I said, I just like the fact that we got to see kind of a battle between supercars. Normally you see James Bond car going up against a horde of regular cars. And he has to use all his tricks because there's so many of the other cars he has to get away from. And this time you're seeing him only deal with one car, but that car's also got missiles and machine guns and lasers and death rays and everything else too. And yes, it's completely over the top, but at that point in the movie, you're grasping at anything to get some enjoyment from it, and that did it for me. That was like, okay, at least I got to see these two awesome cars fight off against each other.
It should have been cool. I agree, it should have been cool. But again, the invisibility card just kind of loses me. And then also, as I'm watching this fight, it's like, okay, you've got your little missile duel going, and it looks like the bad guy finally has them. He's still got missiles left in the tubes. I'm watching, I'm counting. The little red thing is still inside the tube. There's a missile there. He closes the doors and stops shooting them. Why? He could have killed Bond right there.
Well, that's why. He's not allowed to kill Bond, don't you know? But yeah, in every way, that movie just went too far in everything. I mean, the bad guy had an ice hotel, basically an entire hotel luxury resort thing.
Now those are real. It's just that they can't exist in Iceland because, ironically, Iceland isn't cold enough.
That was the other thing I was going to bring up, the fact that everything was supposedly taking place in Iceland because it was covered in ice, so that must make sense. Evidently, they didn't do any research whatsoever and realized that Greenland and Iceland were named kind of opposite. Because they were trying to trick people. No
real trees in Iceland were harmed. Every tree you saw destroyed was an unsold Christmas tree.
Well, there you go.
I'm not making this up.
That's good, though. That's good, because they need jobs too. Unsold Christmas trees need jobs. But yeah, it got so over the top and so ridiculous, and they obviously tried to play on, hey, everybody liked this Chinese secret agent woman from the last movie. Why don't we do it again with a female secret agent from America this time?
There was actually talk of bringing Michelle Yeoh back for the Hong Kong sequences, but that just fell through, which is probably better for Michelle Yeoh.
She probably got a chance to look at the script and she said no.
Well, the other thing, too, is 4 weeks before principal photography started, no role was cast that was not one of the recurring parts. So unless you're talking Bond himself, Moneypenny, M, Q, those parts, no one else was cast yet. 4 weeks before principal photography.
Speaking of
not a good sign.
Speaking of Moneypenny, another disturbing scene in this movie is the ridiculous... Okay, yes, virtual reality is a thing. Virtual reality video games, virtual reality training simulators. They are not that hyper-realistic, and they never will be. Never. We're not in Star Trek. This is not the holodeck. You cannot make super hyper-realistic things, and you can't feel getting kissed by having a pair of glasses on. It just doesn't work that way. Guys, come on. And the fact that she was having this fantasy at all kind of degraded her character. I didn't like that at all. It's kind of like how I thought in GoldenEye they were making out, and they weren't, thankfully. But in this one, for a second, you're like, oh, I like it. There they go again. They're making it. But then it's, oh, okay, it's just her little fantasy. But then it's like, she's supposed to be better than that. She's supposed to be.
It's not supposed to be.
Yeah. And, I understand, yes, they have their banter back and forth, but that's the whole point, is that's all it ever is supposed to be. And I don't know. I didn't like it.
No, I agree with you. I didn't like it either. And because it was virtual, I'm not counting that. My official count is 2.
Yes, I have 2 as well. Just Jinx and Miranda Frost.
Yep.
Yeah. And both of those were not only obvious, but especially the Jinx scene. They actually had to cut some of that even to get their PG-13 rating. They were dangerously close to getting an R rating because of that scene. There was an extra, I want to say like 15 seconds of Halle Berry moaning that had to be cut out in order to get it down to a PG-13.
And Eric has tried his hardest to find the bootleg footage of this.
Oh, dang straight. Yeah, it was very, like I said, this whole movie was overtly sexual. And that's just not the way Bond movies are supposed to be. They're supposed to be innuendo. It's supposed to, you have to be thinking dirty to get the dirty jokes. You know?
I mean, the occasional really blatantly dirty one-liner is supposed to be your payoff.
Right.
Not supposed to be your rapid fire all the time. And I think that speaks yet again to the really shitty fanfic description I have for this script, because not only is everything a reference to everything else and very little originality happens, but you also have the dirty-minded teenager who wrote the entire thing and also apparently did all the special effects. Because let's face it, we're just a couple of velociraptors and top hats away from that.
Yeah, it was just rough. The whole movie from start to finish is just a really rough watch. Now, thankfully, there are some good high-energy action sequences to at least get you from point A to point B, so it's not, I didn't ever feel like just turning it off completely.
It's watchable. I will say it is better than Mission Impossible 3. Mission Impossible 3, I can't even watch. It's just crap.
It wasn't good.
Whereas this, yeah, I feel like I dug the disc out of the bottom of my cat's litter box, but I can still watch it, preferably while drinking, but yes. I can still watch it.
Yes.
That said, it sucks.
Did you ever see the fourth one, the Mission Impossible? What am I channeling Sean Connery again? The Mission
Either that or you're drinking.
Ghost Protocol. Did you see Ghost Protocol?
After the third one, I didn't even want to bother. I'll be honest.
I was like that as well. I had put off watching Ghost Protocol until it showed up on Netflix, and I was really bored one day, and I said, oh, I guess I'll finally watch this. And it wasn't terrible. It wasn't as bad as 3, but it definitely wasn't as good as the first 2. And it's not something I'd go back and watch again, but I'm glad I watched it the once.
Maybe if I have the flu one day.
There you go. I'm already miserable. I can't get any worse. I'll pop in Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol.
That's about the size of it.
Yes.
And while we're on our list of women, we have Madonna making her quick cameo appearance, which
I hated.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, somebody with a Michigan accent should not be the fencing instructor at Blades.
Well, first of all,
and that whole scene sucks, by the way. I mean, really? Do we have to go that over the top? I mean, the teenage interns were going overtime with that one.
Yes. Yeah, that whole scene was ridiculous to the extreme. First of all, I don't like Madonna. I don't like her music. I don't like her as an actress. I don't like her in any way, shape, or form. Never have. So the fact that she sang the song for this, and I use the term "sing" loosely in this case because this is not 80s Madonna who actually sang.
No, this is basically just.
This is 2000.
This is club. That's all. This is a club dub.
Yeah.
It's not singing. It's not quite rap. It's just a club dub. That's what it is.
Yeah,
and the song itself
is awful.
Does not belong to James Bond. It just doesn't. Just in no way, shape, or form.
Yeah, it's just wrong in so many ways. Now, I will say this, though, there was one bright point for me and that I liked about the opening sequence, despite the song. I liked the fact that there was some of the story told during the opening sequence. You don't get that often. Usually the opening sequence either has absolutely nothing to do whatsoever with the movie or it's just, fancy graphics while they show some names. The fact that you actually see some of the torture that he's being put through in North Korea in this prison to kind of tie together the fact that there's, what they say, 18 months between the opening scene.
14.
14 months between the opening scene and the beginning.
Which makes the white guy surgery and the rise to power even more impossible.
Exactly. It's like, wait a minute. But I like the fact that during the opening sequence, we actually are pushing the story along a little bit. I didn't mind that whatsoever. I would usually put it on mute during that time.
My one actual bright spot, other than I really like looking at Rosamund Pike, is the song sucks, but the score is actually okay. It's backing up some pretty awful stuff, but at least it's trying. It's not awful. And the callbacks it makes are respectful. They work. You actually get a callback to John Barry's 007 theme in here, which is kind of a nice tribute. And when the music does it, it's not the blatant throwing it at your face. Here, look, it's the jetpack from Thunderball, and he's going to turn it on.
Yes. Does this still work? Yeah. The score was okay. Again, it wasn't really underscoring much, but it was doing what it could, and it wasn't a bad score. The song
it helped to make it tolerable.
The theme song was awful, but the score itself was okay. But yeah, other than that, there's really not a whole lot of bright spots in this movie whatsoever. I mean, even M's character, Judi Dench, does a fantastic job with what she's given, as always, but she's not really given a whole lot.
No, she really isn't. And what the hell is Michael Madsen doing in a James Bond movie?
Completely unnecessary. He was basically taking over for, he was basically the new brash American guy. Like, oh, look, we've got another one. Here we go.
He works in other films just fine, but he doesn't belong in Bond. He just doesn't.
No, it was odd. He seemed out of place. It was like quite obvious. Like, this guy doesn't belong here. This guy doesn't fit into this movie at all.
No, I would have more readily accepted an on-camera appearance by Steven Seagal than I would have Michael Madsen.
I don't know if I could have gone that far, but yeah. So.
Well, he did have off-camera shenanigans, which we talked about. He did injure Sean Connery while training him for Never Say Never Again.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
He was the fight coordinator.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Yeah, I don't want an on-screen appearance ever in any movie, not even one that he's headlining.
Oh, come on now. Be nice.
But yeah, there's really not a whole lot of bright spots. There, like you said, it is watchable because it does string everything together with enough action sequences that aren't completely awful. Some of them just are, though. I mean, the whole scene with once you get past the initial fight scene between the two cars, then they're chasing each other through the ice palace, knocking all sorts of supports down, yet somehow things don't come crashing down until after they're completely clear.
Yeah, there's water all over the place, and yet the walls and ceilings and floor are remarkably stable.
Yeah, you can drive a car on it, for example. It just gets completely ridiculous, and the whole premise of the fact that they're running from a giant laser shooting from a satellite reflecting sun from diamonds on the... Oh my gosh, I think we've seen this before.
Except we don't even have the cool gay henchman to make it good.
No, it's just a rough movie from start to finish. It's one of those movies that I only recommend watching if you're watching all of them, or if, like we said, if you're turning it into a drinking game because of how bad it is, then that might be an acceptable reason. But
yeah, basically, you do not introduce a non-Bond fan to this unless you don't ever want them to watch James Bond. You only sit people in front of this who have a very good familiarity with the series and just give it the Mystery Science Theater treatment and make drinking games out of it. That's the only way that this is tolerable. This, to me, is the bottom of the barrel. You're scraping and you've hit wood. This is it. Worst of all. Just absolute garbage.
Yeah, see, I would put it at just above that, because I actually think the next movie we're going to talk about is a little bit less watchable to me than this one. So I would put this one still at the very, very bottom of the pile, but just there's one underneath it, and that's the next one we're going to talk about.
But before we leave this one, another thing I want to bring up, it's an echo of a discussion we had in our last episode. Mm-hmm. Despite the fact that this movie is universally panned, I mean, very few people have much good to say about it. It was also wildly successful, financially speaking.
Yes.
It made a ton of money, even though everyone thought it was crap. And once again, that just proves that box office numbers are not an indicator of how good a movie is. Because most of the time, people are going to the box office without knowing much about the movie. They've seen the ads and that's it. They may have read... The educated, the ones who want to try and educate themselves, have read articles, whether they be reviews, technical articles, or whatever, beforehand. But most people who are going into the movie have just seen commercials. That's it.
Right.
And So you have a movie that succeeded financially, but is just both critically and for most fans just was so awful that it really almost killed the franchise. I mean, yeah, there was some other legal stuff going on in the background, but even without that, this very nearly did James Bond in.
Yeah.
And it's really easy to see why. Yeah. And I am so glad that even though Halle Berry says, I'll make the movie for free, they never went through with their spin-off plans for a movie series with Jinx, which I think would have probably been just about as good as her movie with Catwoman, possibly even worse.
That was awful. That was
And again, the idea that they were thinking about spinning off says that they know the horse was dying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just there's definitely nothing here worthy of a spin-off. And yeah, like I said, it just came so close to murdering the franchise. It's a good thing that we've come to an era where hard reboots are a common and well done thing. I mean, that's really what's saved the franchise, is the fact that they're willing to just kind of completely start over, which is something they didn't really do in the past. I mean, even with Brosnan in GoldenEye, it was still, like you said, a soft reboot. It was still the same James Bond. It was still the same essential character set and the same backstory. They were just, doing it a little differently.
Yeah,
however,
and with this one, there was just no going back.
Yes.
And it's really, really unfortunate, because this means that this particular James Bond, he ended up going out and the last person he's with is Jinx. And to me, that's just wrong. Looking back, if we ever could have had him going out in any way with a character who was still alive at the end of the movie, I will make that specific caveat for a very good reason, I would rather have seen him gone out with Octopussy. That's how I would have liked to have seen it end.
That could have been interesting. That could have been better, definitely.
But as far as Die Another Day, it died, and I hope it never comes back as The Walking Dead. It sucks. I give it a squat. It's just terrible.
Yeah, it's not a good film. It's definitely not what I recommend to people. If people are asking me about James Bond movies, I will list almost every single movie before getting to this one, and when we get to our official list episodes, out of 23, this one ranks number 22 on the list for me. So, yeah, that's all right. It's 24 now, isn't it? I don't know how to count. Wait, no, I take that back. It's 23.
Well, it depends on how we're going to want to count it. We may or may not end up counting Never Say Never Again. That's still open for discussion. But
just in the eons, it's now been 23 with Skyfall, right?
But either way, regardless of how many we count, even if we're going to count Card Sense Jimmy Bond, this is still worse.
Oh, I don't know if I can go that far. But just speaking in terms of the Eon Productions, I will rank this second to the last as far as quality, watchability, entertainment value, everything. It's down there for me.
Yeah, I don't want to give too much away about our list episode, but for me, this is, like I said, folks, this is it. We're in the septic tank. But that is Dead on Arrival Another Day. And now we're going to go back in time to the original Abomination, a movie that was not the financial flop that everyone wants to think it was. Even though it didn't do very well in the United States comparative to what they expected, it was still a success, and it did much better in the worldwide market on Her Majesty's Secret Service. This was the first movie that was made after Sean Connery had said, you know what, I quit, I'm done. And they had to scramble to find themselves a new 007. Yes. So this was the first time that we had someone else uttering the famous introductory line. And at the time, it was very much thought of by almost everyone, at least, again, almost everyone in North America, and a lot of Europeans as well, even though it was a financial success, as just the worst thing they could possibly have done. And yet, as time has gone on, it's almost become the PBR of James Bond. It's become almost a hipster thing to say, you know what? This was actually a pretty good movie. And, well, I respect everyone's opinion on this. I really do. It's just, I remember back when I first really became aware of the James Bond series, I could not think of anyone who thought this was a good movie. And yet, as you got into the late 90s and turn of the millennium, suddenly, just like PBR, this movie started to become kind of cool again, to the point where now you have almost two extreme camps and nobody in the middle. You've got the people who look at this movie still as an abomination, and you have other people, and not just individuals, but you have respected publications, James Bond fan clubs that rate this as the single best James Bond movie.
Those people are what I like to refer to as wrong. No, just like PBR, just because it may be coming back in popularity doesn't make it any better. PBR is still a crappy beer. It is disgusting. It is one step above Schlitz malt liquor. It is not good.
I'm going to disagree slightly there. Well, I'm going to say it's not a good beer. As far as cheap beers go, it's the least bad of the cheap beers that I can think of. It certainly beats Natty Ice all to hell.
Oh, well, Natty Ice isn't even... I don't even classify that as beer because it's like 50% chemicals made to try and taste like almost beer. I drank half a can of Natty Ice one time and had a headache. Half a can. I couldn't even get a whole can down before I already had a headache. I'm like, no, I don't need to drink this badly.
And it still beats Beast, and it still beats Bud Light.
Well, like I said, I put it one step above Schlitz, which I put Schlitz above all those things, so it's all good. But that doesn't make it good. Being the better than the ultra crap doesn't make it good. And for me, this one is definitely the worst of the films, of the official Eon films. I don't know. I'll have to give it some real thought if I think this is worse than that. Than God, smart Jimmy Bond. That was just so rough. Maybe if I'd have been drinking like you were when you watched it, I didn't get a chance to. I was watching it at work on YouTube, so I couldn't drink while I was watching it. Maybe if I had, but no, this one. I mean, right from the very beginning. I mean, we have an opening sequence that, first of all, just doesn't make a lot of sense right from the get-go. Plus, it's really slow. It's really dark. I'm not sure if they were intending for us to think it's being filmed at night. It obviously doesn't come off that way.
This is the unfortunate filming convention that you see in a lot of things. We discussed this when we were talking about the earlier episodes, the original Connery films, where nobody filmed in true night. You would see it very, very rarely, but often they would film at twilight and pretend it was night, or they'd put a dusky filter over the camera and film just in broad daylight. Right. And it was just really bad. It wasn't even necessary, but they did it anyway. And you see that here, and you also see, and this is something I particularly do not like, the exaggerated camera tricks which are used in every single combat scene, which basically makes me not believe any of them.
Right.
It's equivalent to it's very much the 1960s equivalent of the overuse of wire work. Right. Once it became popularized in the West with the Matrix, because it makes every combat scene look fake.
Yes.
Maybe George Lazenby is actually as athletic as everybody says he is. I don't know, because I'll never believe it. Because looking at these scenes, it's all sped up camera tricks, frames cut out, or you see them fighting in shadow. So maybe it's not even him anymore. I hate every single fight scene in this movie.
Yes, they're all just so rough, and then exactly, and the camera work changes so drastically from the rest of the movie to the fight scenes, and especially that sped up stuff. It's so blatantly obvious. It's so obvious. Basically, it shows. I guess they were fighting in slow motion, and they sped up the camera to make it look like they were going regular speed. But everything, it's so obvious that it's just like, oh, guys, stop. It would be better for there'd been better fight scenes in earlier movies. So obviously, just use the same techniques they were using.
I mean, yeah, they did do the camera speed up thing in the other movies, and I didn't like those either. Mm-hmm. But it just got more and more blatant now, because the guy who edited those movies is the director here.
So he's like, I can do it as much as I want. It's just the fight scenes are horrible. And then, of course, he does what I think should never be done in a Bond movie. I don't mind it in some movies. I don't mind it, especially in true comedies. But I don't think Bond should ever break the fourth wall.
No,
and the
never.
fact that he does it in the opening scene, the opening sequence of the movie, it throws off the rest of the film for me completely. You know, when he looks right at the camera and says, "That never happened to the other fella." I'm like,
yeah, and it's odd that they decided to do that, because
first of all, the line doesn't make any sense because, the other fella did get attacked by random people all the time. That's what he does. He's James Bond.
I think what he was referring to is he saved a woman from suicide and then she ran away from him. But even then, breaking the fourth wall, it's inappropriate, and it very much goes counter to what the studio was trying to aim for, because once they knew they didn't have Connery, they tried to think of all sorts of different things that they could do as they were approaching On Her Majesty's Secret Service. One was that they were considering, and fortunately they didn't, because by not doing this, they probably saved the rest of the franchise for posterity. They considered having it brought into the plot that James Bond had to have plastic surgery so he wouldn't be recognized because his face had become too well known, that he couldn't do undercover work anymore. And because they decided not to do that, that made it much easier to transition actors later on, as they would have to several times, of course. And then, after they scrapped that idea, then they decided to market it as, well, it really doesn't matter who James Bond is, as far as who the guy playing him is, because it's just a character. So then what you had were posters of this hairy-chested guy with his face blotched out and a question mark over it that were many of the major advance posters for the movie, indicating that who cares who's playing him, it's James Bond. That's all that matters to you, isn't it? And then after going to all this effort to try and not call attention to the fact that there's a different guy here, they then call attention to the fact that there's a different guy here.
Blatantly and completely unnecessarily, I might add. I mean, it's just, and like I said, that whole scene is just, it starts out confusing. You see him basically just like, okay, so the girl cuts him off, and then he just decides to pull up and stare at her through binoculars, and oh, look at that, she's committing suicide? Wait, what's going on here? And then he saves her, she steals his car to go on a short trip back to her car, and then takes off. Well, he's left to fight these random guys who showed up for seemingly no reason whatsoever. It's just, the opening sequence doesn't seem to have anything to do with anything. And it's not, like some of the movies have had opening sequences that didn't fit into the rest of the movie, and it was fine because they were cool enough in themselves. They had enough action, they had some funny, they had, did something that you're like, okay, that was a fun little intro, and now we get into the movie. This just, I didn't like it at all.
I can understand why you didn't like it, but I'll disagree that it had nothing to do with the movie, because, of course, it did. It very much did. It leads right into the rest of the movie. But
no, what I meant is that
I can see where you're coming from, though.
To do with itself at the time, like you didn't know what was going on, basically. Whereas most opening sequences, it's very clear cut what's happening. In this one, you were left like, what's going on? And you had to wait until the rest of the movie to explain the opening sequence. That's what I meant by that.
Well, I think really the purpose of this opening scene was to introduce our new James Bond and then have him kick somebody's ass right away. Except, of course, you didn't see him kick anyone's ass because most of the punching was in shadow. And really, really exaggerated, too. I mean, when he threw an uppercut, I'm thinking it's like Ryu in Street Fighter 2. I mean, this thing is like 12 feet in the air.
Yeah. It was just completely unnecessary. And then you had the opening scene, which... the title sequence, I should say, which I didn't like at all either, because once again, we don't see anything from this movie. Instead, what they show us are a bunch of stills from the other movies.
Yeah, that part I didn't like. I didn't think it was necessary. I think it was a really bad executive decision to make references to all the previous movies, just to say, hey, really, it's the same Bond. Look, we've got all these other things before to remind you. Come on, like us. If there were Facebook, we'd be telling you to press that little button now, but there isn't. So just, hey, we're cool.
Hey,
however,
just like in Die Another Day, it's like, hey, guys, no, seriously, this is a Bond movie. I promise. Yeah, come on, guys, where are you going?
Yeah. But before we get too far in, I do want to talk about the first reason that I consider this movie to be abominable. And that is the man they chose to play James Bond, George Lazenby, who had, previous to this film, not acted in a feature film before. He was primarily known for his Fry's chocolate ads in the UK. He was an Australian model and pitchman, basically. And ironically, he had lobbied hard for the part, to the point where he even went to the same tailor and barber shops frequented by both Sean Connery and Cubby Broccoli, just to try and wheedle his way in. And in fact, that partially worked, because he was able to make an introduction that way. And yet, almost from the moment he got the part, he decided he wasn't going to take it seriously, because he felt that with more quote-unquote sophisticated movies coming out that were dealing with more adult topics and the meaning of life and just that kind of salon talk thing, like movies like The Graduate and Easy Rider he came up with specifically, he thought that the James Bond series was kind of passé. And even as he's filming it, he's losing respect for the part, to the point where even before the movie premieres, he's telling his agent, I really don't think I want to do this anymore. I'm going to grow a beard and not look like James Bond for the premiere, that sort of thing. So a guy who was not going to respect the part, and I don't think made any indication that he did during the course of the film, and not to... he just doesn't seem British. And of course, he's not. He's Australian. He just doesn't. He never felt like James Bond. Now, that said, do I prefer the idea that he was cast to the idea of Adam West being cast? Oh, hell yes. Because an American should never play James Bond.
That would have been interesting, but awful. Yes, I love Adam West. Don't get me wrong, but I would not want Adam West as James Bond.
I wouldn't want Adam West as Sean Connery either, to be honest.
That would be bad. That would be really bad. But definitely. But
there was yet another guy who was considered and offered the role before George Lazenby, who turned it down because he felt he was too young at the time, as we've discussed before. His name was Mr. Timothy Dalton. That would have been interesting. Now, I have not seen Dalton's work from this particular time period, so I can't say for sure. And I do like the maturity he brought to Bond when he did come on. But it's just one of those what ifs.
Yeah, it would have been interesting. I mean, if they'd given him this same script, I don't think that we were going to end up with anything that much better. Like, we would have had slightly better acting, but still a horrible movie. Because I did not like the plot of this movie, the dialogue in this movie. I mean, everything about this movie, basically, I just did not enjoy at all.
Now, this is the one thing I'm going to give a bone to. Well, actually, there's a couple things I'm going to give a bone to in this movie. I have read on Her Majesty's Secret Service. I've read all the Bond books, and it is in fact one of the best of the James Bond novels by Ian Fleming. And out of all of the James Bond movies, On Her Majesty's Secret Service is one of the most faithful. It is, in fact, almost word-to-word faithful. And I can tell you that this plot and this story, everything that goes on, it plays much better on a printed page than it does on film. However, I think that's something that a lot of people just do not understand. A great book does not always make a great movie, and vice versa. They are two different media. They tell stories through different mechanisms. They play at your brain in different ways. And there are things that you can describe with words on a printed page that show up in your imagination one way, where if you just blatantly film them, the magic is not there. It's not going to be the same. The same story that's going to be really exciting and really intriguing on a printed page is not necessarily going to be really exciting and really intriguing on film. In fact, it can sometimes be slow and boring.
Yes.
Or not translate. And then another problem as well is On Her Majesty's Secret Service is the third novel in Ian Fleming's Spectre trilogy. Out of all of his James Bond novels, he wrote 3 that featured Spectre. Thunderball, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and You Only Live Twice. In that order. And that is very, very important because that's one of the things that really ruins this as a movie. Because, of course, in film order, it's Thunderball, You Only Live Twice, and On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Right.
And because they choose to be so faithful to the novel for the story of On Her Majesty's Secret Service, they deliberately make the choice to ignore any film continuity errors with the film stories that they had before. So therefore, you have James Bond able to walk right in front of Blofeld as though he's never met him before and actually think he can get away with pretending to be somebody else.
Yes.
Whereas, of course, in the real films, he has seen Blofeld before. Blofeld knows exactly who he is, so this is patently stupid.
Yes. That's one of the things that bugged me, of course, but I understood why that ended up happening because they were out of order from the books, and I can almost accept that, but not quite.
Yeah, no, I think it was incredibly sloppy of the scriptwriter and his script doctor because there was at least one, possibly more, but there was at least one who's uncredited. I think that was very sloppy to make that decision because most of the people who are watching these films, even back then, were not going to have read the books and would not know this. And so you'll have the continuity errors like that one as the single most blatant, and then they just keep piling up and piling up and piling up. Yeah. So that for anyone who's been watching the movies in order, it just doesn't make any sense. Whereas in the book, it made perfect sense. And then in the books, you would then go on to have You Only Live Twice, where it was James Bond's ultimate revenge. But of course, instead, in the movies, we had Volcano Fort! And that's it.
Volcanoes. Yes, I don't know. There's so much about this movie that I just did not enjoy. I mean, just the interaction between Bond and M, for example. Bond comes off as nothing more than a petulant child. And
yes,
that bugs the crap out of me because, yes, Bond has a problem with authority. We get that. He does what he wants. But he doesn't go, oh, if you're not going to let me do it, well, I'm going to quit me. And that's what he comes off as doing. And it's like, it took a combination of Moneypenny and M conniving behind his back to keep him in the service when he finds out that, oh, wait, actually, I changed my mind 5 minutes later. I hated that. I absolutely hated that part.
And listening and reading some behind-the-scenes discussion, I am of the view that is an acting decision more than anything else, because that's rumored to be one of the things that Cubby Broccoli did not like about George Lazenby's performance, is that he chose to play the character this way. Because you can read the exact same lines and not come off as a childish prick, but George Lazenby reads them as a childish prick.
And that's the choice he makes, yes. And of course,
he's basically playing swingin' London Bond. I mean, this is. There's no coincidence that this is the James Bond that Austin Powers picks up from.
Yes, with the outfit and everything. But yeah, you also get, and then of course during that scene when he's quit the service for all of 5 minutes, he goes back to his office or his house or something and starts going.
It's his office. It's one of the only 2 times you see it. The other was in virtual reality in Die Another Day.
There you go. Well, this should have been virtual reality as well, because it was just as awful. He starts going through, guess what, old gadgets from the old movies that he just happens to have lying around.
It's Honey Rider's knife. It's the watch from Russia with Love. And so on. It's one of the dive knives from Thunderball.
Yeah, it's just so ridiculous. It's like, no, seriously, guys, look, we're a Bond movie. I promise you. See, look at this. See, remember this? Come on.
It means that this is the same guy who was in those movies. He's having memories. So it was really him. Just pretend it was George Lazenby in Thunderball. What do you mean now you think the movie sucked?
It's just another one of those times. And you don't see this in any of the other movies other than Die Another Day, where they just so blatantly try to tie into the old movies. Just, it's like the other movies.
Well, you do, but it sucks when they do it then too, because remember when we were talking about Man with the Golden Gun, J.W. Pepper. I mean, the only time I think that we've had a repeat, I mean, other than the standard repeating characters of Felix and so on, where it's been a callback, I mean, has been Jaws. That's the only time it's been cool.
Right. Well, I'm not talking about repeating characters as much as just like you bringing in random props to be like, hey, look, remember this movie? Let's not think about this crappy movie we're doing right now. Let's think back to this good movie that we want you to think about. It's just...
Well, even that's been done right, too, but Skyfall gets its own episode later, so we'll talk about that then.
But it's not constant and blatant. If they do it once or twice in an entire movie, okay. I'm okay with that. If they do it 15 times in rapid succession to make sure that it's sinking in, that's when I have a major problem with it. And I can't recall any of the other films doing it that blatantly.
No, not that blatantly. As far as the blatant garbage version of it, it's this, and it's Dead on Arrival Another Day.
I think they recognize how horrible it is, and they're like, okay, we need to tie this back. We got to get people's minds off of this garbage for just a minute, and maybe kind of reset their brains into thinking that there's something else going on. I don't know. But yeah, I hated that scene, and then it led into, of course, even worse scenes as he, suddenly, it's just, there's so much garbage. It just boggles my mind.
For me, On Her Majesty's Secret Service is two different movies put together. And I kind of like one, and I do not at all like the other. And I'm pretty sure you don't like either one. And the one that I do like, I think would have played much better. Very specifically, I'm going to cast it this way, with Roger Moore and not with George Lazenby.
Okay.
The movie that I like is The Courtship of James Bond. The movie that I don't like is the one that's supposed to be the actual James Bond movie.
You mean the allergy clinic where he brainwashes them into not being allergic to things like chicken and potatoes?
Yes, and we'll get into the amusing portion of that.
I didn't have a problem with seeing James Bond fall in love if it had been done well. And I think it is done well in later movies that we'll talk about. But in this one, I liked the idea of it, but I didn't think it was played out well. That's in my opinion. I don't think that it was played out well. And because it was so short, because obviously, again, and I know it's being true to the book, but that ending scene just came off as so totally cheesy to me. It just came off as so utterly, just the acting was just not there for me. It did not convince me at all. So that whole thing, is like you building up this love story to this ultimate conclusion, and then it just kind of bleh.
Well, okay, since we're talking about that ending sequence, well, we don't have to go in chronological order. We hardly ever do anyway. The ending sequences are amongst the things that, for me, as of my most recent watching of this movie, and this is going to be at least a dozen times now because I've seen this movie a lot, and I just watched it again today, I have surprised myself and decided to drag it out of the bottom 2. I won't say where I've dragged it to. I'm going to say it's still in the bottom 10. I'm not going to tell you where because we have an episode for that. But it's no longer in the bottom 2 for me, and one of the reasons why involves the last set of sequences. And it doesn't have to do with George Lazenby himself. In fact, like I said, if it was going to be played properly, I want to see it played by Roger Moore, because I think he could have done it with far better class and been much more equal to the task that was put around him. However, the wedding sequence where everybody's gathered to see them off, to me, contains one of the single classiest moments in the entire James Bond franchise. And even acknowledging that I still hate this movie overall, this specific moment to me is one of the most beautiful moments in the entire franchise, and I may have actually just kind of, sniffled once or twice. When Bond throws his hat to Moneypenny, that's class. That was just beautifully thought out and very well done. I think out of all of the scenes that were filmed in this movie, that is the best filmed moment. That is the one time where there's real magic on film, when he tosses her his hat.
I can actually agree with that, only because I think Lois Maxwell did a fantastic job without having any lines there, just in her face, just catching the hat, and just the smile on her mouth with the mix of happiness and sadness in her eyes. It was just fantastic acting without a single word being spoken. And so I give all the credit to Lois Maxwell for that scene being as good as it was.
Yeah, I give I give most of the credit to Lois Maxwell. I will also say the camera work on that was done very well. I think the actual filming technique around it was done well, and the fact that they threw in the story. But you're right, the thing that really sells it is Lois Maxwell. Mm-hmm. It is one of her finest moments. And again, I think that particular moment is one of the most beautiful in the series. And then, of course, the actual ending moment, which was done in 2 takes. In the first take, George Lazenby cried, and the director said James Bond does not cry. So they refilmed the sequence just once, and that's the take you get. Like I said, I wish Roger Moore had been playing in that part, because it has the potential to be so powerful. And I think on Tracy's end, it is powerful. I think, and this goes to something I'll talk about in just a moment, I think that on that side of the car, it's played out magnificently, played very well. And even when she's not moving anymore, there's just a lot of power there. Unfortunately, George Lazenby is also in the scene, and the director may have liked the cut, but I didn't. It's a moment that should have been great. And I really don't like that then you get the bullet hole in the window as our final visual image. And it's like, okay, we've just had this dark thing happen. And then we go to the brass James Bond music and say, James Bond will return and diamonds are forever. It's like, you insensitive prick.
Yeah, like I said, that scene I understand the emotion of it as written, but it didn't play out for me, and it was mostly because of George Lazenby. I did not buy it at all. And maybe if they'd have let him cry, maybe I would have bought into it just a little bit more, but as it was filmed and as I saw it, I just didn't buy it, and it ruined a scene that should have been powerful and emotional, but it just came off as cheap and pathetic to me. So that's one of the that scene is one of the reasons why this movie is so far down on my list as to be actually at the bottom of the list, because it just seems so cheesy. It just comes off as so cheesy, and I don't blame the writing for that. I blame the acting for that.
Yeah, I will definitely blame George Lazenby's acting for almost everything that happens when he's on camera, because he's just so horribly miscast. He's treating the whole part as a big joke. And even when he is supposed to be deeply in love, I'm not buying it. I mean, because you also see him in the exact same mannerisms. I mean, no difference whatsoever.
Right.
Deliver what are supposed to be his sincere lines to Tracy and his really crap-ass pickup lines for the women inside of the clinic. I mean, they're not quite the same lines, even though he uses the same lines on both women in the clinic. But when he talks to Tracy, the words are different, but the mannerisms, the facial expressions, they're all the same. So I'm not buying sincerity.
Exactly. Basically, it was just a piss-poor acting performance. I mean, in all the other films, we've had some issues with acting from some of the other players, but almost universally, the Bond character has been at least fairly well done. You know, even in the movies we don't like Die Another Day, Pierce Brosnan, he was obviously not having as much fun.
No, he actually looked kind of pissed through some of the movie, but he still wasn't phoning it in.
Exactly.
And in Diamonds Are Forever, whereas Sean Connery was just there for the paycheck and you knew it, he also wasn't totally phoning it in either. He wasn't Sean Connery as James Bond so much anymore as Sean Connery as Sean Connery, but it was still a fine performance, whereas George Lazenby, he was just a swinging London playboy making a joke out of it. Yeah.
It was just not good. You know, it's like that's why this movie goes so far down on my list, because in any other movie, at least the main character is trying to act well. In this one, I just didn't buy it at all. And it didn't help that they dubbed him over in the scenes where he's pretending to be Bray. That did not help.
That was just a horrible decision.
I'm not sure why they thought they needed to do that. It was completely completely unnecessary. I mean, just like most of the dubbing that Bond movies seem to do, it was superfluous. It wasn't necessary. I don't think that Lazenby's own voice would have been much better for those lines, but it definitely wasn't necessary.
Yeah, and there was absolutely no reason for that to happen anyway. I mean, it was, like you said, it was dumb. And yet, for however bad Lazenby's performance was in this movie, he is not the worst actor in this movie. He is not even the most miscast actor in this movie. No, for On Her Majesty's Secret Service, the Golden Raspberry Award, yes, I'm stealing that for a moment, hope you guys don't mind, goes to Mr. Telly Savalas.
You didn't buy him as
Satan
Blofeld?
cast as Blofeld.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about that. I mean, the only thing he had going for him was like, okay, he's known for being bald, right? I mean, so yeah, sure, he can be Blofeld.
I mean, why? I mean, okay, yeah, and basically, I have to agree with you. Did they just pick a bald guy? Funny part is, of course, even Donald Pleasance wasn't really bald. I mean, and if you're going for trying to make some kind of physical resemblance to the previous appearance of Blofeld, then you still didn't do it right. Because, yeah, he's bald, but he's not partially disfigured. He has no trouble being incredibly ambulatory. In fact, he's athletic on skis and moves around like... The description I have for Telly Savalas as Blofeld in this movie is big swinging dick. Because that's exactly how he plays him. He plays him just like an overblown American gangster, which is, of course, what you would expect to see somebody like Telly Savalas playing. Either that or Kojak. I mean, I'm waiting for Blofeld to be sucking on a lollipop.
Well, from what I understand...
Go up to all these women and say, "Who loves you, baby?"
Well, from what I understand, that very physicality that you're talking about in the character is why Donald Pleasance didn't get the part, because they didn't think he would be able to pull off the more physical activity, the more physical side that this particular Blofeld role had ingrained into it.
Yeah, and that's a really huge mistake. I mean, okay, if you're going to recast him, fine, but not only did they recast him, but they also rewrote his attitude. And again, you could have read the exact same lines without in the case of George Lazenby as James Bond, without him coming across as a petulant child, and in the case of Blofeld, without him coming across as a big swinging dick. I mean,
it was just not appropriate for that character, for what we've come to expect from that character. I mean, he is supposed to be the epitome of the evil Bond villain. He's supposed to be the top of the line Bond villain, and instead we get Big Swinging Dick, which is like, okay, yeah, I guess he's the bad guy, but at the same time, it seems like in this case, like his biggest concern in this whole movie is getting a title that he doesn't even really deserve. He wants to be, and not even like king of the world. That makes sense
with how he's playing the character, because he's playing the character basically as a physical tough, whereas the Blofeld we've come to expect, and the Blofeld who belongs in this plot, if we're going to accept this plot, is the wily, conniving, wins things with his brain and not with his big swigging dick.
Yeah, this movie, see, this is where it kind of lost me on top of the acting, was with this whole plot. This whole, I'm going to create I'm going to have a little clinic that cures allergies with hypnosis and subliminal messages, and then I'm going to brainwash these girls to go spread this virus I've created that just kills plants. But
no, plants, animals, everything. Anything that it gets injected with, it will kill. Now, the assumption is that it's tailor-made for whatever species that he wants this to be introduced to, so we don't end up with something like, I don't know if you've ever read by Frank Herbert, the guy who wrote the Dune series. He wrote a book called The White Plague, wherein there was something introduced that turned the female of any species at all sterile, and it almost wiped out the entire Earth. It's interesting until you realize how incredibly sexist it is. But when one I'm getting from a few of the subtle points of the dialogue, and there really are subtle points in the dialogue. You just don't notice it because the guys reading them aren't very subtle. That this is tailor-made for specific species as it goes. So we're looking for him exterminating one species at a time, and that includes plants, and of course, because this has to be brought up, chickens.
Chickens, yes. Specifically chickens, because what's her name was allergic to chickens. She couldn't even look at a chicken without getting sick because
and
she was
now
so
she's
allergic.
not only eating chickens, she's sucking on the bone.
She loves chickens now.
Yes,
yeah,
and
that whole thing.
The part of the movie, and as you can probably tell, that cracks me up every single time, and it's not supposed to, so it's not a good point in its favor, is when you hear the hypnosis session and Telly Savalas' voice coming over the speaker. You love chickens. You love chickens.
You
can't wait to go back and take care of the chickens. I'm just waiting for him to say, yes, it's time to find a rooster and get some big ol', you know what's coming next.
Yeah, the whole subliminal thing and the way it
you
played out.
You would fornicate with the chicken if
Exactly. That's you love the chicken. You want to touch the chicken. You know, it got
I'm
really
wondering
that bad.
if this is where South Park got the chicken lover.
It's just absolutely
this is
ridiculous.
way funnier than it should be, folks.
Yeah, the whole sequence with these girls, and I mean, so what's the deal? Is this Bray character supposed to be gay or celibate? And
that's what they seem to think he is, because he's not hitting on them all the moment he walks in the room. Now, while this is definitely atypical James Bond, I can understand that, because of course he's supposed to not really be James Bond and not have it show up that he is, but them coming to the conclusion that he's gay because he's not hitting on them just strikes me as the same attitude you get from a dude bro who tries to hit on an attractive woman in a bar. She says no, and he just says lesbo. I mean, I think it's that exact same thing, just in reverse.
Yeah, that's what it seems. But then there is the scene when Blofeld is specifically saying, like, "Oh, I was able to figure out you weren't this guy because he wouldn't be hitting on these women. You know, he wouldn't be seducing these women."
Well,
does that mean
you can be heterosexual and not try to crawl up every skirt you see too? I mean, story of my life.
Oh. You can? What? Oh, no, just kidding. But yeah.
Yes, married man, you can.
Oops. Yeah, no, but I didn't buy that whole thing. And then the fact that, again, this was another one where the sexual innuendo was a little bit more in your face. Not nearly as bad as Die Another Day, but still more so than any of the other films, I thought.
I thought his pickup line was atrocious. Let's not look at the book with the pictures. Yes, we're going to attract these just sparkling, examples of intellectual giantism with a picture book. No, let's not look at the pictures because you're a picture yourself, especially in the firelight. You're very inspirational. You remind me of a chicken.
I knew it was going to come back to a chicken. I knew it had to come back to a chicken. Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness gracious. Yeah, no, it was cheese on top of cheese, and the fact that he was supposed to be playing, like, that's what I thought. I'm like, okay, so is he supposed to be playing this gay guy who is, these women are just so good that they're going to be able to get him to go straight for them and that's how he's going to get
Not with that haircut. I don't care what decade it is.
It just wasn't good. But speaking of seduction and Bond, what was your count for this one?
3.
You had 3. Obviously, Tracy.
Tracy and 2 women at the clinic. First, the one with the really awful tight curls, yes. And then the one who seduced him in his own room. Okay. So the chickens, and I think the other one was potatoes. I'm not quite sure.
So he had a full meal.
Well, you don't know. I have no idea what Tracy tastes like.
Maybe she's a vegetarian.
If she tasted like strawberries, then hey, maybe. We had a TV dinner going. You got your chicken, you got your potatoes. What's for dessert?
Well, at least, this is another movie that at least making fun of it gives you enough entertainment to make it worth the watch once or twice.
I have to admit, I'm in tears now, folks.
But yeah, there isn't. See, at least with Die Another Day, there was a couple of scenes that made it more watchable for me. This one is a struggle to get through. It was a struggle to get through the first time I watched it. It was a struggle to get through when I watched it again for this episode. And I hope that I don't have to watch this one again for any reason, to be quite honest. Because I know.
Oh, now I got to come up with a reason. Thanks for the dare.
I mean, but it's an actual struggle to get through. And it's just a real rough one for me. I just did not like it at all. I would be more willing to accept it if it wasn't an actual Eon production. If this was one of those weird offshoots, like Never Say Never Again, I can accept that it's awful because it's not part of the actual franchise. But this, it's official, it's canon, and it's awful.
See, I agree. It's official. It's canon. It's awful. It loves chickens. I will stop. I promise. I may have been hypnotized myself by Telly Savalas, which is a really, really scary thought. Okay, I think I've sobered up now.
You've given up on the joke already? What are you, chicken? Sorry. Had to beat that dead horse one more time.
Of course. But, a horse is a horse, of course. But, and it is awful, but I find it both watchable and unwatchable. I find it reasonably watchable for about the first 45 minutes. Then I find it almost unbearable for the next 45 minutes. And then it kind of trades back and forth after that. And the one thing for me that above all else will always keep this movie watchable. I mean, there's one other really excellent point about this movie. I think there are two. Okay. But the one that makes it most watchable for me is Diana Rigg. Diana Rigg is just flat out outstanding. Her performance as Tracy is perfect. It is the one performance in this movie, aside of anyone who has more than just a couple of scenes. So we're still going to say Lois Maxwell's fine, Desmond Llewellyn's fine, but out of everyone in this movie, it's the one performance that I can find zero flaws in. She does everything she should. I don't necessarily think her character is perfect, but she is, in terms of how she plays her, in terms of being believable as someone that James Bond would be able to fall in love with. If anyone is going to play the potential bride of 007, Diana Rigg is it. She for me is one of the best Bond girls of all time, period. And it's unfortunate that she's stuck in a movie with the worst James Bond and one of the worst James Bond villains, just where she's surrounded by such crap, because she doesn't deserve it. Whenever she's on the screen, I'm interested. And it's first because of her performance. I'm not going to lie, she's absolutely gorgeous. But first and foremost, it's her performance. I really think Diana Rigg is fabulous in this movie.
I can definitely agree that she is the best actress or actor in this entire movie. However, it's not enough for me to draw me into the rest of the movie. Like the scenes that she's in, yes, they're good, but then she's interacting with George Lazenby or somebody else who's sucking up the screen. So it's not enough for me. I think I need at least two people acting well at the same time to get me interested, and just having the one just doesn't do it. So I'll give her full credit for doing what she could with the part and doing a great job of it, but I think she was doomed to be surrounded by a bunch of garbage.
For me, if a performance is strong enough, I can generally allow it to prop up something, no matter what else is surrounding her. For example, I like the Resident Evil movies. It's because of Milla Jovovich. That's about it. It's similar here in that, yeah, she's acting against George Lazenby, but he is a little better when she's there just because she's reacting to him. His acting is not better, but it can appear better just because she's reacting to it. I mean, I know it's not better, but again, it's just she props up whatever surrounds her. And she makes the courtship of James Bond's story interesting. Now, of course, this is a completely non-progressive story, with progressive being socially progressive. This is very much you can tell this was written with a 50s mindset. Even though it was written in the early 60s, it was written actually while Dr. No was being filmed. But you can tell this is written with what was even at this time an antiquated mindset of a woman who is still, even though she's free and willful and so on, she still is willing to at least partially go along with an arranged courtship. Even though she pretends she's not, she's actually she's actually very hurt and offended when she thinks it's not going to happen. Of course, it is going to happen. But it's not necessarily a progressive storyline that way, but accepting it for what it is, just like we accept the racism of Mark Twain's books because of the times they were in. We accept the racism and sexism of Ian Fleming's books because of the time they were in. We accept it here. So once we cross that hurdle, it's an interesting story to watch unfold. And character-wise, I can actually picture James Bond against his own will, because at first you can tell he's just going to play along, get what he wants, and get out of there.
Right.
But this is like a more mature version of the James Bond we read about in the Casino Royale novel.
Right.
This is one where maybe he grew up. And I can see the logical evolution in terms of how Ian Fleming writes it. And then the film makes it slightly more progressive than Ian Fleming does, just because Ian Fleming was still a relic. But because of the way Diana Rigg plays this character, it makes it plausible. And the way that Bond is written, as I said, if Roger Moore was playing this part, because specifically I think he could have handled the romantic drama better than any of the other classic Bonds, and I'm using that term very specifically, and it would have even been plausible for the era because he would have fit right in. He's older than Connery. I think that this would have been just awesome to watch. Now, of course, Lazenby's in it, so it's not quite so awesome, but it's still interesting to me. And so the courtship of James Bond, I'm paying attention to. I'm liking this movie, even though it could be acted better by everybody but one person. It's holding my interest, and I can handle it. To me, that's the best part of this movie, both in the beginning and then later on when it's established that they're in love. It makes sense. In fact, the one action scene I really do like is when Tracy is rescuing Bond from the carnival and they're doing the car chase where they end up being inside of an actual road race on ice, and she's just having a ball driving, and she's got her tongue in her cheek, and she's just having fun driving like hell, saying, I really hope my Big M can take this, putting a shill in for the Mustang she's driving. That scene to me is amusing.
That scene was less bad than the rest of the movie for me. Again, it was kind of one of those things, kind of like with Die Another Day, when the garbage is tied together with enough action to keep me interested. These were one of the few action sequences we get in this one, and I enjoyed the fact that it was there because, again, at least I got to have that instead of just the garbage that I was seeing. So I'm much happier that that was there than not, but it wasn't enough for me.
And I can understand that. I can respect it. For me, it's enough to take it away from the bottom of the barrel. And in fact, it elevated it a little further from the bottom than I had expected it to. Because after watching it this time, I feel a little bit better about it than I did before. I still think it's bad. Still bottom 10. Won't tell you where, because again, we have that episode coming up eventually. But yeah, it's still bad, and
it's not unwatchable to me. So that's why, again, of the official Eon movies, I will put this at the bottom spot for right now. Who knows? Maybe things will change by the time we do our list episode, but I doubt it.
Yeah, you might have to watch it again to make sure.
I don't know about all that.
But the other thing is, after Diana Rigg does such a good job and makes me totally believe that James Bond could fall in love with her, and brings it to the point so much where, as a member of the audience, I certainly want to damn, it sucks that she dies. I mean, because out of all of the Bond women who deserve to live at the end, she does. And no, she doesn't. I mean, come on. They let Mary Goodnight live. Why can't they let Diana Rigg live? Come on.
It would have been nice. It would have been nice to see her come back with somebody better than George Lazenby and play against that. That would have been good. But again, like you said, they were trying to keep it as true to the novel as possible, and this is what set up the revenge seeking of the next book, even though that's not the storyline they went with in the movie of that title. So it kind of, I appreciate that they kept it true to the book, but at the same time, this is one of those times when they could have gone away from the book and it would have been better for the series.
They certainly could have done some adaptation that I think would have made it make a lot more sense. And it's really interesting that they decided to keep the idea of Blofeld still surviving to the end, of course, to carry out his dastardly deed, because, of course, Tracy has to die. The moment that they get married, she has to die, because a married 007 is not something that the public is going to accept. 007 in a stable relationship that lasts for more than one story is something that people don't like to accept. It's been tried in some of the novels that Ian Fleming didn't write. Whether or not to a success is a matter of opinion. I didn't mind it. I think it can be done. But for the movies, I just don't think it would work. However, the idea that Blofeld lives, especially since even at this point, I think they knew they were never going to be able to use Blofeld and Spectre again. Even though, I mean, the rest of the lawsuits were still going to come. I mean, we still had years of lawsuits ahead of us. I think they had it in the back of their minds that they weren't really going to be able to do it again. Now, of course, they ended up doing it anyway with Diamonds Are Forever, but I think that was a rush. Because the original script for Diamonds Are Forever, it was not Blofeld. Mm-hmm. That was something they added in later. So as they were approaching this, because the thing that bothered me too with the James Bond movie plot is that, you get lots of Blofeld, but no Spectre.
Yeah. None whatsoever. You just get Blofeld trying to do, basically, it's just him completely. And again, like half of his, and the part that they talk about the most is him trying to get this title of Count. Even more so than his other goal of unleashing these angels of death on the world. He wants them out there so that he can get his title. He wants to be recognized as a Count.
Yeah, he wants his title, and then he wants to be able to retire in peace.
Yes, give me a title, give me notoriety, and then leave me alone. I don't want to be bothered. He has all the money to do this stuff, but that's not enough money to retire in peace, evidently.
Yeah, and of course, I'm doing it so slyly that it takes some really underhanded stuff for you to find out where I am. I could have stayed hidden forever. And made a great living as an allergy specialist because, hey, my cure works. How do I know? Because she loves chickens. I mean, because you can see the allergy cure works.
Yeah, evidently.
The woman who is allergic to chickens is eating chicken.
Yep.
The woman who is allergic to potatoes is eating potatoes.
Yep.
So the hypnosis cure worked.
Evidently.
He could have kept doing this.
Hear that, everyone with allergies? It's all in your head. It's not a histamine reaction at all. That's a lie. They tell you to sell you pills. It's actually all in your head, and you just need Telly Savalas to hypnotize you, and you'll be all better. No, that won't work.
Now, he does say that he's also injecting them with drugs. Of course, this is the late 60s. Everyone was being injected with drugs.
Well, I always assumed that the drugs were just there to help the hypnosis kick in. That's why they were able to conk out so easily. But either way, it still doesn't make any damn sense. The whole allergy thing was just so ridiculous to me. But they had to do something to get them brainwashed, I suppose.
And, of course, we had to have the blatant, old, unattractive woman who's the head nursemaid to all these other younger women and staring at them longingly. Mm-hmm. I mean, that stereotype, I think, was really obvious, as it tends to be in the James Bond movies of this era. And it's like, really? The first thing I'm thinking of, too, especially with the resemblance, it's like Rosa Klebb came back.
Yep.
Because Irma Bunt And I also find it interesting that her name is so close to Bond. It's the German equivalent, essentially, is almost a carbon copy of Rosa Klebb.
Essentially. Maybe that's just Blofeld likes to have that type hanging around. So,
and she even looks kind of like her. It's kind of creepy.
It's kind of creeping me out, man. But yeah, no, there's very, very little in this movie that I can turn to and say, oh, that's a redeeming feature. There's a couple little bits here and there, like we've discussed, but for me, this one is...
There is another one that I think comes across as major excellence, along with Diana Rigg's performance, is John Barry's score. This is, I think, one of John Barry's best scores.
Now, I did enjoy the actual music, but what were they playing it on? Were they playing it on a 2-octave keyboard that you get at Radio Shack for $4.99? Because it just, like, the music itself was good, but it came off as so cheap.
This was the first one of the James Bond movies to have its soundtrack prominently feature synthesizers and electric guitars. And so, yeah, you can tell when the synthesizers come on. But that was kind of innovative for this time period. It wasn't something that was done very often. So, and
I could have done with it being done a little less.
Given other movies that I've seen from this period, because I tend to watch a lot from this period, trust me, you can hear a lot worse examples of this. I think Barry does great. I think Barry does a great job with it. And I also like how he does the opening theme. Now, what they did with that, they decided that the opening theme had to relate to the title of the film. They hadn't gotten away from that yet. And they thought that anything you'd have that would contain the words "On Her Majesty's Secret Service" would sound too much like a Gilbert and Sullivan show tune. Which is why I find it kind of hilarious when you listen to the end credits of Spy Who Loved Me. They have a version of Nobody Does It Better that sounds like a Gilbert and Sullivan show tune. Now, I actually agree with the decision not to make one based on the title, and I like John Barry's theme music that he uses. Though I think the signature piece in this film, and indeed Barry does a lot of thematics on it for the courtship of James Bond, is the last song that Louis Armstrong ever recorded, which is All the Time in the World. And you can never go wrong with Satchmo, ladies and gentlemen. Ever.
No, I definitely like that song. I didn't necessarily feel that it fit in my mind, but again, that could have been just some prejudice. By the time we hear it, I've already been, sitting through 2 hours of movie that I just had to force myself through. So it's possible that at that point I'm like, no more. But I like the song. The song is fantastic, and I love Louis Armstrong, so I mean that's not a problem whatsoever. But I don't know if I felt that it fit in a Bond movie. But I guess in this Bond movie it's okay since nothing really fit.
For me, it fit the Bond movie that I enjoyed, The Courtship of James Bond.
Okay.
It does not fit the James Bond movie where you have Telly Savalas and chickens.
Those chickens, man. Do I need to give you and the chicken some time alone? I mean, geez, what's going on?
I think we may need to rename this the chicken episode.
Yes. The Abominable Chicken episode. That's what this will be called.
But I thought that for the part of the movie that I liked, the song fit very well.
Okay, I can go along with that, even though I didn't really find, like I said, I like the idea of the courtship of James Bond. I didn't think Lazenby was strong enough to pull it off, even with Diana Rigg as his partner. I just didn't buy it. Like I'm fine with the story idea. I'm not against James Bond falling in love and getting married. I'm not against that being part of the story. I just didn't buy it with their acting, or with his acting, I should say.
Fair enough. Oh, and one more interesting note. As most people may be aware, Diana Rigg was a cast member of The Avengers. She is the second woman who was taken from the Avengers cast. The first, of course, was Honor Blackman from Goldfinger. Then we had Diana Rigg, and later on we would have Patrick Macnee, which would complete the major set of Avengers characters. But we also have one more person from the Avengers who actually made her appearance here first and then would go on to the Avengers, and that's Joanna Lumley. She actually dubbed most of the voices for the women at Piz Gloria and played one of them. She would also come to be known as a Hammer Girl when she played Van Helsing's granddaughter in some of the later Dracula movies. So, a little bit of trivia there.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. But beyond that, I have to agree, we don't have a ton of highlights in this movie. As much as it sounds like I've been trying to defend it, and I suppose I kind of have.
Only because I've been pooping in its mouth.
It's still a lost cause defense, because at the end of the day, I do not consider this a good movie. And I think it's less of a good movie specifically because it should have been a good movie, because it is a great book. And it could, and especially for a movie that tries to be faithful to the book. In fact, I think one of its downfalls is it's too much so, because as I said, the media are such different things. Because it should have been great, it makes it worse because it's not. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Well, it does not live up to its potential. And because it doesn't live up to its potential, that makes it even worse because it had so much. It's like if you have somebody who you know is absolutely not going to be able to run a 100-meter dash, and then you have Carl Lewis. If the person you know is never going to finish anyway doesn't finish, fine. If Carl Lewis passes out after 90 meters, you're disappointed. That kind of thing. Or Usain Bolt for people of a later generation, okay?
No, I completely understand that. Yeah, it's kind of like the Crichton syndrome. Michael Crichton writes some fantastic novels that are absolutely brilliant, and with the exception of Jurassic Park, they've been universally made into horrific movies.
I also like The 13th Warrior, but I know I'm one of about 6 people.
Yeah, I was about to say I did not enjoy that whatsoever. It was not as bad as Sphere. I'll give it that, and definitely.
Sphere was total shit.
And it wasn't as bad as Rising Sun either, which was a fantastic book. And then you fill the movie with, you had Sean Connery, you had Wesley Snipes back when Wesley Snipes was actually cool.
He's coming back for Expendables 3 now that he's out of prison.
Hey, good for him. Pay your taxes, buddy. It should have been so good, but it wasn't. It really, really wasn't. And that's one of my favorite Crichton books, actually. So it's just one of those things. And then Timeline. Ugh. I mean, seriously.
I didn't even bother.
Oh,
I knew better at that point.
The book is phenomenal. And then I took Paul Walker, really? No, please, no.
I'm going to go even further in the Wayback Machine and look at the Andromeda Strain, which actually suffers from almost the exact same syndrome that this does, in that the movie is very faithful to the book, too much so. I mean, yes. Now granted, that script makes more changes than this script does. However, you still have the fundamental problem of a story that is a very, very good read and slow as hell on camera.
Yes.
I find the Andromeda Strain movie almost impossible to watch, even though I really enjoy the book. Mm-hmm. And even though I know I'm watching the exact same thing, with the exception that we gender bent a character and but other than just minor changes, I'm watching exactly the same thing, and it just doesn't play well. And I think that's part of the problem here.
I can definitely see that, yeah, and Andromeda Strain is another example. Like I said, really the only Crichton book that I can think of that actually was made into a good movie, in my opinion, was Jurassic Park. And that was partly because they did change it so much. In fact, they left so much out, and they added so many things that they ended up taking stuff from the first book and throwing them into the second and third movies. But the first movie was excellent. And the books were great. So that's the only one, though. Everything else. And they keep trying, too. They keep trying to make his books into movies, and it's just stop. Just let them be books.
Well, sure. It's cash. Come on.
Yeah. But no, I completely agree. Sometimes you can have a great book and have it faithfully turned into a bad movie.
Yeah, and I think that is exactly what happened here. I can still remember the first time I read the book. It was on a very long bus trip that was supposed to have been a very nice, relaxing train ride, except turned out that Amtrak went on strike. So it ended up being a very bumpy ride over a Greyhound.
Yeah, I've had to take a trip on a bus before. I did not enjoy it. And luckily, that was only a short trip. It was only like 150 miles.
Yeah, I ended up reading On Her Majesty's Secret Service and The Spy Who Loved Me on that trip.
Nice. Well, at least you got something out of it. That's good news.
I got one good book.
There you go.
We already discussed how bad the other one is.
All right, well, do you have anything else on Her Majesty's Secret Service?
Just that I'm very glad, as just about everybody was, that George Lazenby, even before the movie came out, said, I'm done. Even though he had the potential of a 7-picture deal in front of him. And if he would have said yes, they pretty much would have had to honor it or buy the hell out of him. And he just walked away. In fact, he'd already gotten an advance on the next film, which he did refund. So he was cool about that.
Good for him.
Though I also find it hilarious that after this movie, which he thought that Bond was over. Yeah, the only other thing that anyone seems to remember him for now is from playing the faux James Bond character in a Cannonball Run flick. So this is all he was remembered for. Yep, talk about calling the wrong shot.
Yeah, well, no, but thankfully for the rest of us, he did that because, if they'd have forced him in, they either it would have killed the series for reals, or we would have had to endure 6 more George Lazenby-headed Bond films, and that certainly would have killed the franchise. I'm almost 100% positive of that.
Yeah, and I honestly think that even one more George Lazenby flick, if you had made Diamonds Are Forever as a George Lazenby flick, and whether you made it in the style that they made it, in fact, if you made it in the exact style that it was made with Sean Connery, it would have been the worst kind of disaster, because the petulant child version of James Bond in a movie that's already that insanely over the top.
Oh, yeah.
Would just have ruined everything. Though ironically, I think that if Telly Savalas was going to be Blofeld in any movie, it should have been that one, because let's face it, he's playing the Vegas Telly Savalas. The Vegas Blofeld in this movie.
There you go. All right, well,
Food loves you, baby. Tattoo.
All right. Well, I don't have anything else on this one. As always, you can find us on the web at hermajestiespod.com. You can follow us on Twitter at hermajestiespod, and give us a like over at facebook.com/hermajestiespod. You can email me if you have any questions, comments, anything like that. I love to hear from our fans, so please email me at Eric at hermajestiespod. I try to make it as easy as possible. You can also reach Ziggy at, what's your email address there?
Ziggy at doomcheese.com, and that's cheese spelled Cheez. You can also follow me on Twitter at doomcheese, again, Cheez. So I try to make it pretty easy for you, too.
Absolutely. We try to keep things as simple and concise as possible. We'll be back again in a couple of weeks. We will return, as we might say.
And we will be moving away from the classic James Bond series, because after our discussions, we've decided we do kind of make a delineation here, because as Eon decided, the James Bond as we knew him died after the 20th film. Just Die Another Day really kicked it. So now we move on to the rebooted James Bond series in our next episode, where we will be discussing Daniel Craig's Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace.
Yes. All right. So I think
that will do it for the Abominable Chicken episode of Her Majesty's Secret Podcast. I'm Ziggy Berkeley.
And I'm Eric Dewey.
And we'll see you next time on Her Majesty's Secret Podcast, only on The Fern.
Kyle here. If you're like me, then you want all your shows in one spot, or a lot of shows in the same place, or better yet, some really great podcasts all on one network. Visit foureyedradio.com for all the best shows featured on Blog Talk Radio, Stitcher, iTunes, Mixcloud, and more. Four-Eyed Radio Network, The Fern.